I'm pleased and honored to be joined again by Bill Binney. Bill, how are you?
Pretty good, thanks, Jason.
It's great to see you. Bill, you've dedicated really most of your life to the service and protection of the citizens of the United States. You've dedicated yourself to defending the Constitution against all enemies, foreign, and now you're faced with defending against constitutional enemies that are decidedly domestic.
That's right. Yeah. In fact, they're the greatest threat to our republic.
It's amazing, and I think people are constantly amazed by hearing your reporting. We've spoken in the past about your team's development of ThinThread, a software platform that was utilized by the NSA initially under your development to sift through unbelievably vast amounts of data while protecting the identities of innocent citizens. You left the NSA after they threw away the protections and began aggregating and essentially searching every piece of digital data generated by every person in the United States, right?
Yeah, there were three things they removed from the program. One was in order to be able to select the needles out of the haystack, we had to be able to see into the haystack and see what was there. So we did this by the metadata that was used to connect people and pass data along the network. But then we could pull out all based on rules, deductive, inductive, and adductive rules, we could pull out all the needles, let the rest of the haystack just go right through and never collect or store any of it. That was one of the first things they removed because they wanted the data on everybody. So now they took it all in and stored it all. The second thing they removed was our protections. Once you got pulled into the data by our system, if you weren't known to be a criminal of some sort or have some warrant against you, your data was encrypted, so your identity was protected. And they removed that because they wanted to know everybody. They wanted to first know about everybody, everything they had and said and were doing, and they wanted to know who they were, so they removed that. And the third thing was our auditing program. We had a program we were developing to audit everybody who came into the network and looked at the data, what they did with the data, where they went, how long they stayed, and so on. And so in order for nobody, they didn't want anybody to know what they were doing, so they removed the auditing program.
Wow.
I mean, otherwise Congress could come up here and say, what are you doing? Look at the auditing program. I say, that's what you're doing. You know? So in order to stop that, in order to keep the knowledge of what they were doing away from Congress and everybody else, they had to remove that program. So they got rid of that too.
Amazing. And of course, Congress, they're the representatives of the people of the United States. You've pointed out in our previous conversations that the NSA and some of our other three-letter agencies operate with absolutely no oversight. And what you're describing is the mechanism by which they ensure that there's no oversight.
That's right. Yep.
So now people like yourself, Kevin Shipp, and some of the other whistleblowers who have come forward to share this information, we've become the de facto oversight of these rogue agencies. Unfortunately, we don't have the power to actually do anything about it other than share this information with as many people as possible.
That's right. Yeah, but I mean, I would also point out that I don't particularly care for the term whistleblower simply because as a right part of our government, you are required to report corruption, fraud, waste, and abuse. That's part of the regulations for employment. So I was fulfilling all the regulations that were required of me for employment with the U.S. government when I filed as well as others NSA for corruption, fraud, waste, and abuse. And they did a study that's been buried and hidden from Congress, basically, but basically said everything we said about NSA and corruption and fraud and all that was all true. And that's Intel 05-Intel 03 DODIG report. Intel-03.
Right.
Buried.
Yeah, and of course, there's been no changes for the positive since you've left the NSA, as far as you know. If anything, it's gotten much worse.
Yeah, they've actually, Obama doubled down on what Bush has done, and they basically established or government, which is the bureaucrats who run the agencies, not the appointed heads, because they come and go. The bureaucrats are there all the time. They're the ones who run these things. They fundamentally are they look at ways and means to build a bigger empire doesn't matter how well it works. It doesn't matter whether or not it solves the problem. Build a bigger empire, and that's what you pass on to your next bureaucrat.
Wow.
Yeah. And then you in the process you get greater and greater numbers of amounts of money to give to contracts. So you build a contracting empire around it. So that builds this deep state, so to speak, with the military-industrial complex that President Eisenhower was talking about when he left office in 1961.
Wow.
And what happens then is these guys, once they retire or leave government service, they go to work at many times or multiple times their salary in government for these different contractors. They go to them, and then they solicit contracts from their buddies back in government.
Yeah.
And so it's an incestuous relationship that's swindling the public, basically.
Now, Bill, do you remember back to 1961 hearing Eisenhower make that speech, and were you watching it on television? Can you tell us how you felt at that time when you heard him say it?
Well, it was kind of hard for me to understand because I was just in high school then, so I didn't, I was a young kid. I didn't know very much, and so very little experience with the world. I hadn't left my local area up in Pennsylvania. I never left Pennsylvania, basically, except to visit my uncle in Michigan once. So that was about it.
But you did join the Army shortly after that, didn't you?
And then I got to Turkey and started seeing the world and intelligence and all of that. So that's how I got into working NSA. I went into military intelligence, the Army Security Agency, which is that's the Army component of the CSS, Combined Security Services, NSA, CSS. That's why the head of NSA is a military guy, because he's also got under him these military components of SIGINT.
Right. It's interesting. And it's interesting to hear your reaction, because watching the film, or rather the broadcast from Eisenhower in high school, it sort of went over your head. He's saying this thing that's difficult for you to understand, yet so shortly after that, you joined the Army, you became a part of the military, and were serving the people of the United States. So it's an interesting experience you had, because I think most people probably had the same experience. Eisenhower says this, no one's ever heard of that before, and it's just this sort of amorphous, confusing thing. And then by the time we're overtaken by this military-industrial complex, well, of course, it's too late to do anything about it.
That's right. Yep.
So hopefully
we're so far gone now, it's not funny, it's really.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that there's a way back. You've sent me a bunch of different infographics today. Should we go over a few of these?
Sure.
What's this first one that we've got here? This is a sort of a map of the world.
This lays out the AT&T communication network around the world. Because AT&T is one of the major cooperating communications companies. They run the fiber optic lines and the data centers around the world, and you can see them here. And it simply says they have a very large network, and they are now part of cooperating with the NSA and the U.S. government, which also gets them into the Five Eyes and about 9 other countries in the world that are participating in the bulk acquisition of data on everybody in the planet.
Puts AT&T into the Five Eyes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow. So, Bill, we've spoken quite a bit on Crowdsource the Truth about the Five Eyes, and you're the first guest to actually link a corporation with the Five Eyes. Of course, we know it's the United States.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just AT&T. It's Verizon's a part of it. The British companies are, so are other companies of other countries around the world. Yeah. It's not just AT&T. AT&T is one of the very largest of them all.
Wow. I mean, that's military-industrial complex right there. Of course, we're very well aware that the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, they're all part of the Five Eyes, and now we've got these corporate entities in there as well. Have you discussed the Federal Bridge Certification Authority very much, Bill?
No, I haven't, no.
Is that something that you're familiar with?
I'm not that familiar with it, although I would say there's no regulations that govern the exchange of information here. It's all basically dumped on NSA per their request.
Wow.
So it's not, there's no limitation on this at all.
And something that's really stuck with me since our last conversation, we were talking a bit about Hillary Clinton's emails and all this, Robert Mueller investigation searching for evidence. It would seem that the NSA has every bit of digital evidence on every person there is. So any type of search that these guys are doing really is just a charade. Who is the NSA working for, if not to enforce the laws and provide this evidence?
Well, the three main agencies involved in the use of this information, as well as the acquisition of it, are NSA, FBI, and CIA. Those are the three main ones. They're also the three main ones that were working with Richard Nixon back in the late 60s, early 70s, when he was spying on people in the United States because they opposed his policies in Vietnam or other forms of policies that he had, or simply because he wanted to spy on his political enemies. So that was NSA with the program they called Minaret, and FBI with the program that they called COINTELPRO, and CIA with a program called Chaos.
Wow.
Those are the three programs that came out in the Church Committee. And then there was a Shamrock program that NSA had been using since World War II to spy on people communicating, U.S. citizens as well, communicating internationally. So using wire transfers and things like that.
We've heard a lot about how COINTELPRO was used against Martin Luther King. Is there factual evidence to support that statement?
I think they had that, yeah, from the FBI, from the raid that some people did in the FBI facility in Pennsylvania, I believe that was.
Who raided an FBI facility?
It came about.
Who raided the FBI?
There were some people who just recently came out and admitted to it.
Wow!
It was an activist group who decided they were going to go in to raid the FBI facility in Pennsylvania and find out what they could, and they found out about this COINTELPRO program, and that got the Church Committee going, and then they got into Chaos and Minaret and all the spying in Shamrock and all that spying. That's why the Church Committee named the FISA.
That's amazing.
Also the intelligence committees in Congress, and also the creation of the FISA court.
Wow. There's so many people who don't know about these things. You know, they're so basically suppressed by the mainstream media. And I'm really interested that you brought up Richard Nixon. I've always felt that, like so many things that we hear from the mainstream news and the government, the explanation of what was going on during Watergate was not exactly what was going on. Was it all about Nixon spying on McGovern, or was that break-in at the Watergate Hotel something else?
Well, that was a part of it. That was the physical part of it. But the electronic part was being done by NSA and FBI and CIA. So
no one even knew about the NSA then. 1970, when was Watergate? 71, 72?
Mid 70s is when the Church Committee started. At 73, I think. 70, it was for the 72 election.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, just prior to that.
And that was where NSA was first revealed to the public, or forgive my ignorance?
Congress, they didn't know it existed.
Congress didn't know it existed.
Yeah, it was created by a presidential order by President Truman in 1952.
Wow.
It wasn't created by Congress.
That's amazing. That's something we're going to have to dig into some more in the future. So you've also sent me this Fairview infographic. What are we looking at here, Bill?
These are the tap points. This is the NSA tap points in the AT&T facilities around the 48 states of the United States. Mm-hmm. They claim, of course, that you can see this was, if you notice the date there, 29/11/30, right there in the lower right corner. That's the first date of the, or up at the top also. That's the date for the first classification review. That means the first 25 years after this law is created. So that slide we created. And so this was the state of the Fairview AT&T tapping points servicing NSA and CIA and FBI, mm-hmm. And collecting all the data on U.S. citizens, content and metadata.
Wow.
If they claim, look and see the green points along the coast, the East Coast and the West Coast, that's where the transoceanic cables surface. That's where all foreigner communications are coming into the U.S. and going out to foreigners from the U.S., also transiting U.S., coming in and transiting to other points, and then out to Asia, for example, from Europe through the U.S. to Asia. That's where all those foreign communications are. So if they were only after foreigners, that's the only place they'd be. The rest of these tap points are after us. That we are the real target of this Fairview program.
Wow. Now, I lost you for a moment there at the beginning. This 2029-1130, does that mean this document is classified until November 30th, 2029?
No, it means that in November of 30th of 2029, they do a classification review, the first classification review of the slide. So every 25 years, they do a classification review.
What is a classification review?
It's it goes through a review process where people look at it to see whether or not the agency, originating agency, has people in their agency look at it to see if, in fact, they should still keep it classified.
So how did we get this? Are we in trouble for looking at this classified information? Should I email it to Hillary Clinton?
Yeah, you should email it to Hillary Clinton. Ask her. But you know, where do you think her email was collected? Yeah, but no, this is part of the Snowden material. I also put this as an exhibit in my sworn affidavit into the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, telling them that I was prepared to testify in federal court about all these violations of the Constitution by our federal government, in these agencies in the federal government. And this, by the way, under Executive Order 13526, Section 1.7, which is the regulation governing classification of government. It requires that it says anything in government that is evidence of a crime, fraud, waste, abuse, criminality, or corruption of any sort, or to hide embarrassing things about people or agencies. So you can't do that. You must declassify it, in fact. So that slide is evidence of a crime against the Fourth Amendment of the constitutional rights of U.S. citizens. Also, it violates the Pen Register law because they're looking at voice over IP. There also violates the Electronic Privacy Act, Electronic Security Acts. All these things are being violated by this process.
Wow.
So they are required by that regulation to declassify it because it's evidence of crimes.
Yeah, and Kevin Shipp has spoken to me many times about the fact that it's illegal for them to redact things that aren't classified or related to national security. But of course, they're the ones who sort of make the rules and hold the power. So to some extent, it seems they sort of do whatever they want.
Yep. Yeah, but this is, of course, this slide, and as well as many others from Edward Snowden, are on the web, and anybody can look at them and review them. But if you don't understand, I mean, my point in my affidavit to the federal court suing the government for violation of the Constitution is that this is a direct evidence of their violation of our constitutional rights, and I'm prepared to testify because I know exactly what these programs are doing.
Right. And we're looking at that affidavit right now. What's the status of this case?
Well, it's still being, the federal government is trying to submit motion after motion. They're trying to keep it out of court. They don't want me testifying in court to it because I'll be out there saying exactly what they're doing, violation of all the laws that we have in the Constitution, and they know it too. So they're trying to keep out of court and slow roll it. One of several things.
Bill, can you hear me? Bill? Have I still got you there? Huh. Very interesting. Mr. Binney's connection has... Oh, Bill? We may have lost Bill there. Let me see if I can get Bill back here. Just when you get to the good part, that's when they start to... it says connection lost. Are you connected to the internet? I certainly am. Wow. We've lost Bill Binney. Let me see if we can get Bill back. Huh.
Hello.
Bill, I lost you there.
I just got the internet back. It just came back.
No problem. Can you hit the link again and we'll resume?
Okay, let me do that again.
Very good.
Let me go back to
sure.
that.
Okay, I'll see you on there.
The link there.
Yep.
All right.
Bye-bye. We'll be back in just a minute with Bill. So strange how I have guests on who reveal interference with the internet and then They're cut. But Bill will be back with us shortly. I have an idea for how we might be able to protect against that just a little bit. Although, if we're dealing with the NSA, there's certainly nothing I can do. Okay, we've got you back. Now, I've got...
Somebody didn't want us having this conversation.
I think you're right. I've got a little item I can employ here that may improve the security a little bit, but probably not. So you were saying that the government has basically made persistent efforts, filing motion after motion, to prevent your case from getting to court. And it's so interesting that that's been happening to you, Bill, because I've recently become very interested in this practice. Essentially, it's lawfare, utilizing the system of laws, our justice system, as a weapon against you.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you heard me before, but I think they're basically hoping for one of several things to happen. Either I die, and can't testify, or the lawyers and we run out of money and give up and walk away. But that's not going to happen because we're in it to the end. So they're not having money to do this. So I don't know. They are continuing on their own, along with me, and I'm helping them out as best I can. So, and that includes filing this affidavit. And in here, of course, I've laid out the crimes they've been committing, and I'm prepared to testify as to how these programs all work.
Right. Can you give us just a brief overview of that? I see James Clapper listed here. I mean, these are some of the most powerful people in the intelligence community. Well,
yeah, I mean, actually, the whole program started with Bush, Cheney, Hayden, and Tenet, which I reported to the FBI as conspiring to subvert the Constitution of the United States, and by doing these programs of spying and collecting data on all the U.S. citizens. Mm-hmm. And the courts are helping them out, by the way. If you simply looked at the first document from the Snowden material published, that was the Verizon order, the order from the FISA court to Verizon to turn over all the records of all their customers. Well, it was over 110 million U.S. citizens. Wow. The Fourth Amendment says you're supposed to spell out exactly who you're after and what you're after and why, and give justification. So what's the justification on each of the 110 million customers of Verizon to collect their data? That's a general warrant. We had a revolution for a general warrant back then.
Bill? Bill?
Are you there?
Yes, you're back.
Are we still connected?
Yes, it's coming in and out just a little bit. And it's funny because when the connection breaks, I get a warning that's right over your mouth, as if they are literally putting a gag on you.
Jason?
Can you hear me, Bill? Bill? Oh, wow. Again, amazing. I don't know if we're going to be able to make this happen completely. Wow. Wow. It's perhaps an interview where what isn't said may be more telling than what... Oh, you're back. You're there?
Yeah, I'm back.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now, yeah.
Okay, I was just telling the audience this is an interview where perhaps what isn't said may be more telling than what's said.
That's true. Yeah. Well, I keep telling them they have to fix their tap on me because that's really a bad tap. It interrupts, and they're supposed to basically collect what I'm saying and not interfere with what I'm saying.
Obviously, what you're saying is very dangerous to some extremely powerful people, and they don't necessarily
there we go again.
want it to get out. So, can you still hear me, Bill? Bill? Huh.
See,
Bill, maybe what we should...
I couldn't hear you there, Jason.
Maybe what we should do is I could call you back on the telephone. It might be lower bandwidth, and we could just have your voice. How does that sound?
Okay, that'll work. Yeah.
Let me do that. Let's get to that.
Okay. All right.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Okay. So let's get you on the phone here. Give me just 1 second to get that arranged. We'll disconnect this. Bill, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can. Can you see me here? Or?
Well, I can't see you because I just wanted to use the regular phone, hoping that that might give us a little more bandwidth. Now, I know you can't see the graphics that I have on screen, but I'm back to looking at that AT&T map that you gave us that has a number of symbols, squares and diamonds and stars.
Yeah.
So what are all these other things? Peering link, router complex, VoIP, router complex?
Well, the peering sites are the ones that connect the AT&T communications network with other communications network like British Telecom or Verizon or Deutsche Telekom or other kinds of communications systems and service providers around the world.
Wow. So basically our government is giving away all of our information to foreign countries that are, I guess, involved in the Five Eyes and things like that.
I wouldn't say all of it. I would say depending on the country, they probably restrict access. But the Five Eyes have the most access. I mean, you can see it in the IC Reach program where GCHQ and the other Five Eyes have direct access into the NSA databases. But I'm certain they have some sort of limitation on that. But I mean, the FBI and CIA also go in there, but I'm sure they don't have any. They use the Stellar Wind program, so there's no real limitation on them.
And for those who maybe have missed some of our previous conversations, tell us again real briefly what Stellar Wind is.
Well, Stellar Wind is the domestic spying program. Any U.S. collection on U.S. citizens is dumped into the central database or storage definition or partition called Stellar Wind. So anything you want to know on U.S. citizens, you have to go into the Stellar Wind program.
Wow. So conceivably any piece of information basically about anyone can be pulled out of there. As I look at the east coast of the United States, there's this symbol indicating something called pine cone. What is pine cone?
Yeah. Well, that's the central point for AT&T. I think it's kind of misplaced on the map, but it's the address is 1 AT&T Way in Bedminster, New Jersey.
1 AT&T Way.
It's the NSA, basically their headquarters facility for AT&T worldwide.
I see. And so there's something particularly high bandwidth coming out of there, I guess.
Yeah, basically, if you go on the web, you can see they've got the diagrams for their entire worldwide network on the screens up on the wall, and they basically manage the flow of information around the world from there.
Wow. So New Jersey is perhaps the central hub of all intelligence in the irony of ironies. Bill, I've got this map that you've sent me that shows microwave towers. Is that what we're looking at?
Yeah, that's off the web. It's the 1960s microwave lines for AT&T.
1960s?
Yeah, back then it was called Ma Bell, but it was every dot in there, every white dot along the line is a microwave tower, and it's line of sight communications. It saves them having to set out many or larger cable lines, physical cable lines from point to point. You see, the microwaves will take care of that. They can substitute for that. So it saves them money.
It's quite a lot of them. They seem to span the country.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. A lot of them still exist, and they're also using satellite now as well as the fiber optic lines.
There's been a lot of talk about 5G. I think people are concerned that 5G is dangerous and potentially could be weaponized, that it's similar to technologies utilized in the battlefield. What can you tell us about 5G?
Well, you know, if it's going down the fiber optic lines, it's not a problem. But if it comes across on microwave, if it goes on the microwave lines, then, you know, microwaves are very dangerous. I mean, they've known that in World War II. You didn't stand in front of the radars and other kinds of things. You know, anything like microwave communications, you do not stand in front of because you'll get cooked or in some way disturbed, you know, one way or the other. So, yeah, and there's some documentation on the different ranges of microwaves and the effects they have on people. on the web. If you go look at that, you can read about some of that.
And
so yeah, there's a genuine concern. Yeah, just like there's a genuine concern with cell phones and the radiation that comes out of them when you put them up to your ear.
I always try to use a wired headset whenever I can on the cell phone. So back to this map of the microwave lines. I mean, this seems like an incredible amount of microwave radiation going around all over the country. Has anybody done any studies about what the effects on human health this large-scale use of microwave communications might have?
Not to my knowledge, but they may have, you know, and kept it secret. I mean, because then you could disrupt a major industry if you expose that kind of knowledge.
Huh. And of course, 5G is the next generation wireless technology, so I think it will in fact use some sort of radio transmission. My understanding is that 5G works in coordination with the GPS technology within the phone to point a wireless signal directly at your phone.
Well, I mean, you see, that's that's again the directional bombardment of people with radiation. So there's certainly a concern that people should have. I mean, I could understand the concern they would have. I would not want that myself. So, you know, I just the less radiation, the better. I mean, radiation causes mutations and different kinds of cellular, disruption of the DNA in the cells. So I mean, it's like getting X-rayed, you know, that kind of thing. It's the same thing happening there. It destroys tissue.
Yeah, except we're subjected to it all day, every day.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
it's quite a concern.
It also happens with the power lines. You know, the power lines are create electric fields going down the power lines, and if you have another power line coming by, you get intersecting electric fields, and that creates a magnetic field. So, you know, those kinds of things are also, I mean, again, I think there's been some studies on that, but nothing that's been widely understood by the public. I don't know. You know, I don't think that anybody's made that publicly known.
Yeah.
But it's not a good thing to be around power lines either.
Right.
In my view.
Right. And of course, these various disruptions throughout our interview of the phone call breaking have thrown off my train of thought a little bit, but I want to take you back to that affidavit and the government's ongoing efforts to submit motions to delay the case from actually getting to court. Now, before we got disconnected, you had said something that got partially cut off. Did you say that your fellow plaintiffs or co-defendants, or what is your role in this case, and is there a way that the viewers can help you with this financially?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's a financial issue, because the lawyer involved in that lawsuit is doing it pro bono. I mean, he's doing it on his own because he's got concerns too about what's going on, and you know, trying to save the republic. So that's why he's doing the lawsuit. He's doing it without being paid, and so am I. Whatever effort I've been able to put into it to help him along, doing this affidavit and getting him to understand better what the issues are, so he can better frame the argument in a court of law. By the way, I should also add that right now I think this lawsuit is being cited and referred to in the Harvard Law School. And also being looked at by the courts as something that needs to proceed. So, and I think perhaps the FISA court has said we have this under control. No, they do not. They do not have anything under control. They don't have diddly squat under control, especially when it comes to NSA, CIA, and FBI. Those people do whatever they want, and the FISA court doesn't necessarily know about any of it.
Wow. We've heard quite a lot about the FISA court being abused in terms of achieving whatever goal its abusers would hope to achieve. Now, the lawsuit is over a year old. You signed it in July of 2017, and I'm looking here at an article from NBC News, which is talking about you. It says, NSA critic Bill Binney says Trump pushed meeting with CIA's Pompeo. This came out shortly after the lawsuit. Has anything progressed? You spoke a bit about this in our last conversation.
Yeah, but nothing has happened since then with relative to now Secretary of State Pompeo. Certainly, the new head of CIA, in my view, knows already about all this program and how long it's been going on. So, I don't think she has any interest in talking to anybody about anything different.
Yeah, and we've heard quite a bit about Gina Haspel, and John Kiriakou told us in our recent whistleblower roundtable, former intelligence agency roundtable, that she was very involved in other illegal programs within the CIA. So it's very daunting to think about all this stuff, Bill. How can people watching help you achieve your goal, or help this lawyer achieve his goal in getting this to court?
Well, I think they can offer support to the lawyer there, Elliot Schernhardt. I can't pronounce his last name very well, but offer your support to him in any way, and I'm sure he would have ways that maybe people could help with that lawsuit.
How do I find him online? How do I spell his last name?
It's on the affidavit there at the top,
okay.
The first page of the affidavit.
Of course. There he is. I see him.
See, originally the lawsuit was filed against President Obama because it started, I think, in 2016. So, and then we had to change it. So you have to put the president's name there because you're suing the government.
I see. So that would understandably result in some resistance coming from Mike Pompeo if now we've got President Trump being sued. They might not be quite so eager to help you. So I believe I've found the Schuchart law firm, When Experience Counts. Is this the correct?
Yeah, I think that's it. He's in Tennessee now. Yeah.
Knoxville, Tennessee, exactly.
Yeah,
All right. So that's good. So perhaps people could contact Elliot and ask him if there's anything that he would like to see done to assist him. Of course, he's doing it pro bono, as Bill said, and I've never been in communication with Elliot. He hasn't asked me to say this, but I think I can just presume that even though he's working on this without charging anyone, it would use quite a lot of his time and resources. So, I mean, I wonder if it might be possible for members of the Crowdsource community to provide financial or other support. This is such an important matter that you're bringing to everyone's attention. Were there any other data points or facts on either the Fairview chart or this microwave map that you wanted us to focus on?
Well, I mean, it's just that if you look at the legend there of the Fairview slide, it says VoIP, so that tap point is basically focused at that time in 2004 in collecting VoIP, Voice over Internet Protocol. So it means they're copying content, not just metadata. They've been lying to everybody all along. This has been content collection as well as metadata. That's why they had to build that 1 million square foot storage facility in Utah, and why they have to build another one for 2.8 million square feet over here on Fort Meade.
Wow.
That one's still being built. So, I mean, the more data that's being passed around year after year, if you keep collecting it all, you keep storing more and more, so you need bigger and bigger facilities. So that's what's happening. And, oh, by the way, we the tax-paying public, get the opportunity to be fleeced out of many more billions to build them.
Right. Yeah, these are incredibly expensive data centers. And, you know, another thing that occurred to me after our last conversation, Bill, these data centers, I mean, they're basically just gigantic complexes filled with computers and hard drives. And as you're describing, I mean, they're gathering so much data each day, every phone call, every video phone call, every voice over IP call. These centers will eventually and quite rapidly fill up. And it just seems that there's so much data being generated and collected, the world will eventually be full of hard drives and computers.
Yeah, that's right. Well, actually, storage is getting cheaper and cheaper and more capable. For example, if you take something about the size of your thumb, that can now store a terabyte.
Yeah.
So if you imagine having a rack of those things, a rack would be a 3 foot by 3 foot square, about 8 foot tall. Just fill it full of your thumb-sized devices, And you can imagine you can get several thousands of terabytes there, or, maybe even a petabyte or two,
Right.
So then think of that as being 100,000 or 1,000,000 square foot of racks.
Yeah.
And just think of how much you could store. And then, of course, they would filter out things like the local TV stations and things like that. You don't want to collect all that stuff. That's a good deal of what's going on. So once you filter that out, you reduce the problem of storage. So it gets simpler, and if you can put it in digital form, you can compact it even. So, for example, if you record the voices out of voice over IP and run translators over it, then you can reduce it to digital and store it.
Wow.
So, and I have been collecting evidence that they've been using translation devices like Dragon and other kinds of devices that are pretty good now.
To dictate, to transcribe the calls?
Yeah, to transcribe the calls and get perhaps an 80% accuracy rate on translation, and then use a scanning software looking for certain phrases or words and things like that, and scoring that particular conversation. And having a threshold set that once it passes that threshold, you resort to pushing that transcription to somebody to do a full transcription of it.
Wow. Now, Bill, we've heard from other people that there's a plan afoot to take all of this data and create sort of a predictive model, some software that can predict human behavior. Do you have any information on that?
Yes, that's basically the big. That's fundamentally coming out of the big data initiative that President Obama started in 2012. That they haven't yet succeeded at doing, by the way.
Wow.
So, yeah, they wanted to do that. They've been spending. The Pentagon, at least in the outline of that budget when it first came out, was going to spend $250 million a year soliciting. This is just the Pentagon. It doesn't count all the other departments or agencies of the government. They're also doing this, but they were soliciting industry to come up with algorithms that would go through large, massive amounts of data and figure out what's important for people to look at in it. So that means it's got to understand what the massive amounts of data mean, which means they have to be able to analyze it automatically, which they have not been able to do to date. And so they've been failing miserably, but spending a lot of money and having a lot of fun doing it. That is, making certain numbers of people rich and laughing all the way to the bank about the taxpayers being fleeced.
Huh. Well, it doesn't sound good by any measure.
No, it doesn't, no.
Huh.
And in fact, the measure is pretty much stated by Wolfgang Schmidt back in 2013, right after the Snowden material started coming out, and he remarked he was a former lieutenant colonel in the East German Stasi, and he remarked about the NSA collection of data as something that the Stasi could only dream of.
Wow.
So that tells you where we are and what we're doing and the direction we are heading in as a government and a country.
Bill, are you amazed that people aren't more shocked by the information that you've been bringing forward for so many years?
Yeah. I mean, I just think it's probably, in essence, too complicated for them to even necessarily deal with or comprehend or even know what to do about.
Right.
I think probably they're baffled at it and the capability, and it's amazing. And what do we do? They just don't know what to do. My point is, I had saying we need to fire everyone in Washington that's there now because they're all a part of it, and and hope that outsiders going in will do any number of things that will straighten it out. They could do that. I mean, if we got the right people in there, that could happen. But the money in Congress down there and in the government has a way of subverting, changing good people into corrupt people.
Yes, you've said that you witnessed in the tenure in your time there at the NSA that it went from a group made up of former military and intelligence people who were dedicated to protecting the citizens of the United States, to a company that was serviced primarily by contractors who were interested in profits, the bottom line, shareholders in their company, etc. That seems to be the way so many of our agencies are going.
Yeah, and outsourcing is the government, that's the narrative they've been preaching and pushing for, about 2 decades now.
And the thing that's so interesting that I think a lot of people, we can say that, but it's, you really need to kind of, as with anything, zoom in on the details of how these things evolve, because, we look at, it's sort of in the rearview mirror at this point, but the hacking of the DNC or whatever it is that happened with the DNC. Many people remember James Comey admitting that the FBI never looked at the DNC servers. President Trump has spoken about that many times. The thing that I find so interesting is that former FBI agent Sean Henry is a principal at CrowdStrike, the company that was doing this investigation. So the question is there someone in the FBI who gains a deep understanding of the loopholes and the protections and the things that are in place that prevent the FBI from acting in certain ways to protect the citizens of the United States? And do those people then come up with complicated plans to form companies that can then contract to these agencies to work around some of these protections that we're supposed to have?
Yes, and that's part of the corruption and the incestuous relationships between government agencies and their heads, and also managers and the contractors involved. Yeah.
So if Eisenhower were alive today, I mean, he obviously had some insight. I think probably in 1960 he was talking about something maybe as unsophisticated as an aviation company, a munitions company, etc., and someone selling bombs, essentially basically financing the campaign of somebody like Lyndon Johnson, and then in turn Lyndon Johnson goes and bombs somebody, so we have to buy some more bombs. I don't think Eisenhower could have ever anticipated the complex, integrated nature of what we're describing right now.
No, but I think his experience started in World War II when he was at the commander of the forces in Europe, and he of course could see some of that from that perspective. Also, when he was on the staff of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, I think he could see it there, and so I think he had the idea, and from there it could only get worse, as he thought and envisioned. So yeah. That's exactly what's happened.
I mean, it's sort of like anything, Eisenhower might have been there for the beta test, and now we're on, version 7.0 or something like that, where it's much more sophisticated as it's through iteration after iteration. It's interesting to look back on that speech, knowing what we know now. I certainly hope we're not too far gone. We're getting close to the end of our hour here, Bill. Was there anything else that you wanted to go over? Any points, any advice you have for people? Should they be writing to Congress people? What can we do?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's part of what I've always been saying. The squeaky wheel gets the oil, so squeak. And the way to do that is to confront these, House and Senate members when they're going around campaigning at the town meetings and so on. Just bring it up in the meetings, and embarrass them and make them commit one way or the other, and if they don't do it, then vote to fire them. I don't really see any difference between Democrats and Republicans here. They're all the same when it comes to this.
Yeah.
They all are basically, when one regime is in, they use it one way, like the Republicans use against people like in Nixon when he looked at his enemies lists and so on. Mm-hmm. Or the Democrats get in and use through the IRS, who has access to this data also. So they use the IRS to slow roll people getting 501c3 to be politically active, which they did to the Tea Party and religious organizations. So, it's only it doesn't matter whether one is there. If the problem is allowing this kind of collection of data in the government gives this kind of power to government, no matter what the government is.
Right.
Change the head of the government, you get a different application, but it's the same damn principle. They shouldn't have the data to begin with. It's a violation of the Constitution. So,
and as you
The way to stop it is to stop the collection of this data.
Right. And so, as you said earlier, there's been basically no change at all under President Trump. Is that correct?
That's right. So far, nothing. I mean, all Congress has to do is put in a little law that says this law overrides everything that's been written before. It says any U.S. government agency that has data on a U.S. citizen, they must show probable cause to hold that data, otherwise they're required to purge it from their databases. If they did that, they could cure it all right away.
You would think that President Trump would be uniquely sensitive to this, given that the FISA court and all of this unauthorized surveillance was used against him.
That's right, yeah. It's also being used against other political members now. And so now they're all squeaking about it. You know, they're all getting, oh, my. So we peons are the ones that have been who've suffered here. We don't count, you see. We're not a part of the Department of Just Us. So, you know, we don't count, right? You know, but when the politicians in D.C. start having it used against them, oh, well, now it's really important to look at, you know.
So perhaps we're turning a corner, that the president has had this situation used against him. Do you have any hope?
I certainly hope so, yeah. I certainly hope that. I mean, if he wanted to do something, I certainly have the right things, the right idea to stop all this crap. You know, it won't be a problem to stop it.
Right. Well, hopefully, Bill, our viewers can tweet this video at President Trump and share it with their friends and family to get the word out. You're always revealing shocking things, and it takes me frequently a few listens to make sure I'm absorbing everything, because a lot of this stuff is happening on a very high level. It's amazing the level of control that these telecom companies have. We've spoken in the past about the one CEO, I guess it was Quest, who stood up to them and got thrown in jail. So
that's right.
Yes.
Well, he became the poster boy for all the rest of the CEOs, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we've heard quite a bit about that, how the law is used to make examples of people.
Yep, that's right.
Threats and intimidation are what they know. Well, I got to thank you, Bill. My guest has been Bill Binney. He is a veteran of the NSA, and he's been revealing information to us that's quite shocking. Bill, do you have any kind of website or social media presence that you would invite people to communicate with you through?
No, I don't do social media because I don't work for nothing. I mean, that's what the companies want you to do. When you go on and do all kinds of things there and say, I like this, I like that, I like that, then they advertise to you, and that's how they make their money. So you do all the work for them, and then they capitalize on it. So I don't do social media stuff.
Got it.
Sorry.
And then they give everyone the impression that they're getting something for free, but they actually are stealing from you your right to choose what you get to see. Of course,
exactly.
Alex Jones and InfoWars have been pushed off of Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. And I'll tell you, Bill, without Alex Jones, that's the first place I saw you.
Right, yep. And he was one of, see, most of the mainstream media won't have me on. I mean, I've been on Fox News a couple times, but the rest of them basically don't invite me on.
Because the things you're saying are destructive to the very same system that puts millions of dollars into their pockets. Isn't that true?
That's very likely, yeah.
Yeah. And that's why it's so important that we carry on with efforts like Crowdsource the Truth. That's the exact reason why I created this. And you know, Bill, without knowing all of the things that you know, I identified that these multi-billion-dollar corporations that are funded by advertising from other multi-billion-dollar corporations can't possibly be bringing us news that's in our best interests. So it's important that people become sponsors of their favorite independent journalism outlets. Hopefully that'll be Crowdsource the Truth. People can go to patreon.com/crowdsource the truth and sponsor the program. I want to thank Bill Binney. I really appreciate you coming on, Bill. I look forward to our next conversation. And of course, you have an open invitation anytime you have anything you'd like to share with me or the viewers. By all means, we'd love to have you back.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Bill. Have a great day. I'll speak with you soon.
Okay, thanks.
And thanks for watching, everybody.